Hi guys. My internet's back, but we are currently in a tornado warning. The winds are getting really fast and picking up, and our lights just flickered. So I'm going to hopefully get this lesson. I'm excited about it because I love food chains and food webs. And your video that you watched yesterday about food chains and webs will really help you be successful in the piece that you're going to add today. So our my focus organism, Muddy Mud Skipper, will be different than yours, but you will add to your table of contents slide. You'll see that you already have to slide 9 with the following information. Now we are going to add slide 10, which is energy. I'll show you what that is. Slide 11, food chain, and slide 12 is food web. I would like for you to add these pages and items to your current Google Slides. Please share those Google Slides. When you say turn in on today's April 24th assignment, you need to attach the slide again. That way, when I open up that assignment, I can see what you've added. I'll see everything, but it'll be really easy for me to then go to page 10, 11, 12 and add your grade for continuing. The slides that I've seen and you've turned in, they're looking great. So we are going to move forward. My mud skipper, he's cute, biological classification. You guys have done a great job with that. As far as the energy slide goes, here's what I want from you. You know that in ecosystems, we look at the flow of energy. Energy flows through an ecosystem, and you know through that video that as energy flows through an ecosystem, you actually lose some of that energy to heat. Now, according to the law of conservation of matter and energy, you cannot create nor destroy energy or matter. So that losing is not actually leaving the system, it's just leaving as heat. So that 100% of the energy that is in that ecosystem, every trophic level decreases because things give off heat. Matter gives off heat, and that heat is then energy and transformed and recycled and reused, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So my mud skipper is a heterotroph. And a heterotroph is a word for an organism that different, troph, that trophic level of energy. Heterotrophs get their energy from a different source other than themselves. Autotrophs get their energy from themselves. So things that are producers, plants, things that photosynthesize, are autotrophs. Auto myself, troph, there's my energy. But my mud skipper cannot photosynthesize, unfortunately. So my mud skipper is a heterotroph, which means it needs to consume. It's a consumer. And heterotrophs could consume plants, they could consume animals, they can consume a mixture. My heterotroph mud skipper is actually a carnivore, not an herbivore or an omnivore. This mud skipper consumes insects, crustaceans, small fish, small worms, things that are living, that are also consumers, so that meat part. And then we'll talk about those levels when we get to the next slide. So I found this mud skipper eating video, and it's not very great because, for one, it's in an aquarium. But again, scientists have not studied all of these organisms that you are studying. So if you're studying the lion, we have lots of data on the lion. If you're studying some yeast, we probably have lots of data on the yeast because of beer making and food making and all of those things. But some of you are studying some really obscure, cool things. And so you may not be able to find a video totally okay. I was able to find a video of my mud skipper eating in a fish tank in an aquatic environment, and you can see that mud skipper is eating worms. Their diet, so when you see this word diet, that means what their food source is. Mud skipper's diet consists of insects, crustaceans, small fish, and worms. The food web is the linear energy flow. So I'd like you to make a slide of food web of that linear energy flow. So I always kind of sort of start with my organism food web. And I start with the mud skipper, and I know that that food web is where the energy is flowing. This is different from what you learned in fourth grade. In fourth grade, you learned who eats who. That's not how we represent food webs in high school. In high school, we're looking for the flow of energy. So my secondary consumer, my mud skipper, gets its energy from this worm. So the energy goes from the worm to the mud skipper. Notice the direction of the arrow. This is nitpicky, it's small, and it's super meaningful, the direction of the arrow. So I know that the worm is giving its energy, probably unwillingly. The mud skipper is eating the worm, right? But the mud skipper is getting that energy from the worm. Therefore, that's the flow of energy. Where does the worm get energy from? And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide. But I just put plant matter rotten, like at the bottom here where plant matter is rotting. So that plant is giving its energy to the worm. There's our energy flow. Now, as far as where the plants gets energy from, there's our sun. There's the base. There is that major anchor of all of our ecosystems, really. There are a few pretty extreme ecosystems that don't require sunlight, but in general, the sun is a really key, often left out component of our ecosystem. So the sun gives energy to the plants. The plants then photosynthesize using that energy to turn that sun's energy into sugar. That plant gives its energy to worms, and the way I give my energy is something's got to eat me. And that worm gives its energy to the mud skipper. The sun, as the base of our food chain, is the sun. The first level, so plants, the organisms that are autotrophs. Autotrophs are the producers. They are really what's producing the sugar and the energy for consumers to then take advantage of. So without plants to convert that sun's energy into actual sugar and food, we'd all need to have photosynthesis ourselves. So first level from the sun is called a producer. That producer is an autotroph. The organism that eats producers, the organism that gets its energy from producers is called a primary consumer. Primary first. The first consumer. The first consumer in our food web is the primary consumer. Notice that the mud skipper doesn't take advantage of the plant nutrients. It takes advantage of the worm nutrients based on its body systems and its cells and how its digestive system works. So, although this arrow is a linear arrow, this single line pointing from plants all the way to mud skipper, that mud skipper really is depending on the producers, those plants. Because without the plants, the worms couldn't exist, and without the worms, the mud skipper wouldn't exist. Shh, shh, shh. They're barking. I think there's a frog. Stop. So in the bottom of my little slide here, I wrote the source of energy in a food chain is the sun. The sun gives energy to plants. The plants use the sun's energy to photosynthesize, making sugar as producers to give energy to the worm. The worm is the primary consumer and gives energy to the mud skipper, which is the secondary consumer. So on this slide, you are going to make a linear path, and you're going to find out that in your linear path, especially if you're doing fungi, I'll show you a little bit about what you're going to have to do. Or if you're doing something that's a producer, your linear path might be sun and your plant. Like Olivia, who has a conifer tree, your path is going to be sun, conifer tree. You could then create an arrow of what the conifer tree gives energy to. So you'll see in my next slide, I'm going to show you the web. So what I did is I just copied and pasted these images off Google images, and I searched either clip art or cartoon. You can search images that look real or not, it doesn't matter. If you'd like to sketch this and take a picture and put it in your slideshow, awesome. If you'd like to use Google Draw to draw it, awesome. If you want a screenshot, great. If you can find a really good food web of your organism that's already made, great. But I had a hard time doing that and I wasn't really comfortable with everything that it showed. So then I decided to take these 4 images and put them into my food web where I copied and pasted the sun, I copied and pasted the grass, I copied and pasted the worm, and I copied and pasted the mud skipper. And then I said, well, dang, what other organisms are going to be in the ecosystem? That linear food web chain tells me very limited information about who eats who in for my mud skipper. So I searched mud skipper. So you can search the predators of your organism, what preys upon. And I found out that shorebirds and snakes prey on my mud skipper, so that these birds will eat my guy, that this snake will eat my guy. So I am drawing the arrow. And so what I did is I copied and pasted my pictures first, and then I added arrows later. So my snake is here. My snake gets energy from the mud skipper. My shorebird, my egret, gets energy from the mud skipper. And then I thought, okay, well, the worm is giving energy to the mud skipper. What else gives energy to the mud skipper? And so I learned, if I do go back here and do Control V, here's my arrow. I learned that also mud skippers can get their energy from small fish. So I might want to draw that arrow pointing from the fish to the mud skipper. And so what happens in the fish? Like, where is the fish in this ecosystem? Oh yeah, herons eat fish. Fish give energy to herons. Fish also eat worms. Worms, in addition to getting their energy from grasses, can get their energy from detritus. And detritus is this really cool word that means rotting stuff. It could mean rotting leaves, it could mean rotting trees, it could mean rotting plants, it could mean poop, it could mean animal carcasses. So in some of your ecosystems, some of your animals will, like a lion will eat something that's already dead, but then what happens to that dead thing? Well, bacteria. Bacteria is in these ecosystems a lot. And you'll notice I didn't even put bacteria in my ecosystem because I had so many other things to put. I mean, this could take you for the rest of the year. I want you to come up with a general food web that's going to show these relationships. I also kind of want you to think about what's normally there in the example habitat. So this represents a mangrove tree, and a mangrove tree is a tree, and you can see these roots here that grows underwater. And the root system is underwater, and therefore they're along shorelines, especially in some brackish area waters where it's a little bit fresh, a little bit salty. So the sun is also giving energy to the mangrove tree, and the mangrove tree in this ecosystem is going to rot and break down, and it's going to become detritus. Look at what rotting stuff, in addition to me drawing bacteria in here, rotting stuff gives energy to shrimp. Rotting stuff gives energy to crabs. A lot of crabs are detritus eaters. Rotting shrimp gives energy to clams. Rotting shrimp. Rotting stuff, it could be rotting shrimp. If the shrimp died and started to rot, the worm will eat the rotting shrimp. If the crab dies and starts to rot, the worm will eat the rotting crab. The rotting grass. So this detritus is from rotting grass, rotting trees. It's also from rotting animals. Like, these arrows could go everywhere. And part of what I want you to experience is the fact of how complicated the relationships are in ecosystems when it comes to energy flow. Food webs represent the energy flow in an ecosystem. So This is my simple ecosystem. I am going to leave it here for now. We're going to come back to this and add more information, but it's kind of a lot of work to get online and look at clip art and look at things. I did want to show you this image that I found. So a lot of mudskippers live in mangrove forests. You'll notice in this image there isn't a mudskipper in the image, but you'll notice I stole the detritus from this picture. That there, the seagrass, the leaves turn into detritus. This detritus can give energy to the shrimp. It gives energy to worms, a different kind of worm. Bivalves are like clams. It gives energy to crabs. Crabs can also give energy to small fish. Small fish can eat crabs. And so you'll see the sun is giving energy to the seagrass. It's giving energy to the mangroves. These amphipods and isopods are tiny, tiny, tiny little organisms that are in your compost bin that will actually break down detritus, which is really important. And they live in that ecosystem. So this was a great way for me to start, but I didn't like, number one, it doesn't have the mud skipper. And number two, I really wanted it to not include the water and all of that, even though my brain really liked seeing that. I wanted to go back to here is my add 3 slides. You are going to add the energy slide. You are going to add a food. This should say, excuse me, I need to correct this. The Mudskipper Energy Flow food chain. And then you are going to add the Mudskipper Energy Flow food web. 3 slides. Energy, food chain, food web. Food chain should be labeled. The food the food web should not. I look forward to seeing your work, and I will talk to you soon.